It was a dark and stormy night, and the residents of Oakwood Street huddled indoors, seeking warmth and comfort from the relentless rain outside. Among them was Jake, a food delivery driver who had just received a peculiar order from an old, abandoned mansion at the end of the street. As Jake approached the eerie mansion, a chill ran down his spine. The house looked as though it hadn't been inhabited in years, its windows boarded up, and ivy creeping up its decaying walls. Despite his unease, he couldn't resist the promise of a hefty tip. Carrying the food in one hand and a flickering flashlight in the other, he hesitantly made his way to the front door. The creaking hinges sent shivers through him as he stepped inside the dimly lit, dust-filled entrance hall. A faint whisper echoed through the mansion, but Jake couldn't make out the words. Dismissing it as his imagination, he continued down the hallway, guided by a faint light emanating from a room ahead. The smell of decay and something else, something unnatural, permeated the air. As he reached the source of the light, he found an ancient dining room with a table set for one. The food he had delivered seemed untouched by human hands, at least. The shadows danced along the walls, making the room feel even more unsettling. Just as he was about to turn and leave, a chilling voice spoke from behind him. "Don't leave yet, Jake. Stay and share a meal with me." The voice sent shivers down his spine, but he couldn't resist the compulsion to turn around. There, at the head of the table, sat a gaunt figure dressed in tattered clothing. His face was a skeletal mask, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity. Before Jake could react, the figure pointed to the empty seat across from him, urging him to sit. Filled with dread, Jake cautiously took the offered seat, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure reached out and began to eat the untouched food, as if ravenously devouring the meal he hadn't enjoyed in decades. Jake's mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. As they ate in silence, strange noises echoed through the mansion: footsteps, whispers, and eerie laughter. The room seemed to come alive with unseen entities, watching and waiting. Every fiber of Jake's being urged him to run, but an invisible force kept him anchored to the chair. Finally, the figure stopped eating and turned his attention to Jake. "I have been trapped in this house for centuries, unable to leave until I find someone to take my place," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of isolation and desperation. Jake's heart sank. He realized he was facing a malevolent spirit, cursed to haunt the mansion and seek a new victim to take his place. If he left now, he'd be trapped here forever. Fear consumed him, but his survival instinct pushed him to find a way out. "I can't stay here forever," Jake stammered, trying to reason with the spirit. "There must be another way for you to find peace." The spirit's eyes flickered with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You dare defy me?" he growled, rising from his chair. The room grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in on Jake. Thinking quickly, Jake remembered a talisman he had in his pocket, a gift from his grandmother for protection against malevolent spirits. He reached for it and held it out before him, reciting a chant his grandmother had taught him. A blinding light filled the room, causing the spirit to recoil. The talisman's power seemed to weaken the ghostly entity, giving Jake a chance to escape. He ran through the mansion, dodging obstacles and evading the grasping hands of unseen entities. As he reached the front door, the mansion shook with rage, but the talisman's power held firm. With one last surge of energy, Jake pushed open the door and sprinted into the stormy night, leaving the haunted mansion and its tormented spirit behind. From that night on, Jake refused to take orders from the old mansion, spreading the word of its cursed nature amongst the Oakwood Street residents. The tale of the haunted delivery spread like wildfire, and soon the mansion was avoided by everyone in the neighborhood. However, the memory of that night stayed with Jake forever. He couldn't shake off the feeling that the spirit was still out there, seeking another victim to take his place. And so, he continued his food delivery job, always cautious and alert, knowing that the world was full of unseen horrors, waiting to be unleashed. In the quiet town of Ravenwood, nestled among dense woods, an eerie fog always hung in the air. Late one stormy night, a sinister food delivery order was placed at the local restaurant, Grimm's Gourmet. The order seemed normal, but something about it sent shivers down the spines of the staff. A chilling note attached to it read, "Deliver it, or else." Reluctantly, the delivery driver, Mark, embarked on his ominous journey. The address led him to an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. The eerie silence unnerved him as he stepped out of his car and approached the ominous structure. As Mark approached the mansion's front door, it creaked open as if welcoming him in. A cold draft brushed against his face, and the air seemed to grow heavier. Reluctantly, he stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. In the dimly lit dining room, he found a table set for two. The unsettling ambience made him question whether he was alone. The food he carried suddenly felt heavier, as if infused with dark energy. Ignoring the unease, Mark placed the meal on the table and turned to leave. Just as he reached the door, a blood-curdling voice called out, "You can't leave without sharing the meal, can you?" Frozen with fear, Mark turned around to see a ghastly figure materializing before him. It was the ghost of the mansion's former owner, a malevolent chef who died under mysterious circumstances. The ghostly chef demanded Mark to stay and dine with him. Realizing he had no choice, Mark sat down at the table. As he took a bite, the food tasted vile, as if it had been tainted by darkness itself. The room grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in around him. Mark tried to escape, but the mansion's dark magic held him captive. Every time he tried to leave, the hallways twisted and turned, leading him back to the dining room. Days turned into nights, and Mark lost track of time. He grew weaker as the malevolent chef fed off his fear. In his isolation, Mark discovered old journals revealing the chef's tragic tale. The chef's obsession with perfection led him to dabble in sinister rituals, eventually sealing his fate and binding his spirit to the mansion. He vowed to haunt anyone who dared to disturb his domain. Mark's sanity waned as he battled the ghostly chef's influence. Desperate to break free, he stumbled upon a forgotten recipe book containing an ancient ritual to banish evil spirits. He needed to recreate the cursed meal and offer it to the chef, but with a twist. Mark infused the food with a powerful cleansing herb and ventured back to the dining room. The chef's malevolence intensified as he sensed Mark's defiance. With trembling hands, Mark presented the modified meal to the ghost. As the chef consumed the enchanted food, a violent storm raged outside, amplifying the chaos within the mansion. Mark used the momentary distraction to enact the ritual, chanting the words with every ounce of strength left in him. The room shook, and the chef's howls filled the air as he fought to resist the banishment. But the cleansing herb's power was stronger, and the chef's spirit began to dissolve into a swirling vortex. Mark seized the opportunity and made a desperate dash for the front door. With one final effort, Mark escaped the haunted mansion just as it vanished into the night. The storm subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence. He rushed back to the restaurant, vowing never to forget the horrors he witnessed. From that day forward, the town of Ravenwood avoided food deliveries from Grimm's Gourmet. The cursed mansion remained a chilling memory, a place where darkness lurked and malevolent spirits sought to consume the souls of the unwary. And so, the legend of the dark deliveries in the haunted mansion became a cautionary tale, a reminder to all who dared to tread in the realms of the unknown, that some evils are better left undisturbed. In a small, forgotten town, nestled amidst dense forests and shadowy alleys, there was a quaint little restaurant called The Haunted Bites. It was notorious for its eerie ambience, but the locals couldn't resist the temptation of its mouth-watering dishes. One gloomy night, a sinister order came in, one that would set a chilling chain of events into motion. At exactly midnight, the restaurant's phone rang. The cook, Jackson, picked it up, only to hear a low, unnerving voice ordering a dish that wasn't on the menu, a phantom feast. Curiosity overcoming his unease, Jackson accepted the order, not knowing the horrors that awaited. As Jackson prepared the mysterious order, he noticed that the restaurant was unusually cold. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to whisper sinister secrets. Fear danced in his heart, but he pushed it aside, attributing it to his imagination. Outside the restaurant, the delivery boy, Alex, arrived on his bike, eager to complete the task and head back home. The bag containing the phantom feast felt heavy, as if it held something more than just food. Alex approached the delivery address, a decrepit mansion hidden at the edge of town. The place was surrounded by an aura of darkness that sent shivers down his spine. Reluctantly, he knocked on the door, and it creaked open with an eerie sound. A mysterious figure, draped in a tattered cloak, stood in the doorway, beckoning him inside. The air seemed to thicken as Alex entered, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure directed him to the dining room, where a single, dimly lit candle illuminated a long, dusty table. On the table lay the phantom feast, an array of dishes that seemed both enticing and terrifying. As Alex placed the food on the table, he noticed peculiar ingredients: a pinch of graveyard soil, a splash of moonlight, and a hint of forgotten dreams. It dawned on him that this was no ordinary meal. Before he could react, the mysterious figure began to consume the dishes with unnatural speed. Each bite echoed through the room, accompanied by eerie laughter that seemed to pierce Alex's soul. As the figure devoured the last morsel, the atmosphere grew colder, and the room plunged into darkness. Panic enveloped Alex as he realized he couldn't leave the mansion. An invisible force held him captive, while sinister whispers echoed in his ears. With each passing moment, the figure's appearance began to change, revealing a ghastly visage beneath the cloak. Pale, lifeless eyes stared into Alex's soul, freezing him in terror. Back at the restaurant, Jackson grew anxious when Alex didn't return. He decided to investigate and followed the delivery route to the haunted mansion. Armed with a charm from an old folklore book, he entered the mansion, determined to break the curse. Inside the mansion, Jackson found Alex, paralyzed with fear. With trembling hands, he began chanting the ancient incantation from the book. The sinister figure turned its attention towards Jackson, unleashing an otherworldly scream that threatened to drive him mad. Undeterred, Jackson continued the ritual, and the atmosphere crackled with energy. The mansion trembled, and the figure's form flickered, struggling against the power of the incantation. In a final surge of determination, Jackson completed the chant, banishing the malevolence from the mansion. The figure let out a haunting cry before dissipating into the darkness. The curse lifted, Alex regained control of his body, and they both hurriedly escaped the haunted mansion. The once gloomy town now felt eerily quiet, as if the horrors of the night had silenced even the whispers of the wind. As the first rays of dawn peeked over the horizon, Jackson and Alex returned to the haunted bites, vowing never to speak of the night's horrors again. The town gradually forgot the events, dismissing them as mere legends. However, the haunted bites closed its doors forever, and the mansion remained abandoned, forever carrying the weight of the curse that had been unleashed that fateful night. Even years later, the tale of the phantom feast and the midnight delivery haunted the minds of those who dared to remember. The story passed down through generations, serving as a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed. And so, the legend lived on, a spectral warning for anyone who dared to wander into the realms of the unknown, a warning of the horrors that could lurk within something as simple and innocuous as a food delivery.